Are these Chryslers meant to last a long time? Well, let's check just how durable they really are. The Toyota Camry is literally renowned for maximum reliability in vehicles that are good for lasting 200,000 or 300,000 miles. Ask yourself, what about the Chrysler 300M? Could in fact that be more reliable than a modern day Toyota Camry? That may seem like an obvious question, but it's not so obvious. We're going to share some details with you, talk about the overall reliability, cost of maintenance, and the typical issues you're going to find. We're later also going to share the quality experience. Let's get into it now. Both the 300 as well as a modern day Camry have a lot of similarities. You can get an 8-speed automatic transmission, an optional all-wheel drive system. They're both sedans and they're both very similar size. A couple key differences, of course. In here, in the 300, we have a 3.6-liter all-aluminum, 300 horsepower engine that also turns out about 264 pound-feet of twist, whereas a Toyota Camry has a base engine that's much more meager. It has a base engine of 2.5 liters that makes just over 200 horsepower, with an optional 3.5-liter V6 that bumps you up to almost 300 horsepower. If you were going to ask a lot of engineers, they're typically going to say the larger the engine, the slower the RPM, and the longer it will last. That may or may not be true. Let's talk more statistics. So for me, longevity of a vehicle, whether it can make 152, 250, or 300,000 miles, comes down to a lot of different KPIs or key point indicators, and some of that is actually tied up in something I call Repair Pal. Yeah, it's a great resource, samples thousands of vehicles across the nation, talks about some of the key points: unexpected failures per year, severity of those failures, as well as annual servicing costs, and an overall rating of reliability of a 5-star. So drawing the direct comparisons between the Toyota Camry and the Chrysler 300 here, they both see about 0.3 failures per year, which is approximately one major failure every 3 or 4 years. And of that, you would expect about 13% of the failures within this vehicle here would be likely severe. So in other words, significant cost, big dollars, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 repairs and beyond, whereas a Toyota Camry is down closer to 11%. So clearly the Toyota wins that one. On top of that, annual service cost for the 300 like this is going to be about $630 per year, whereas the Toyota Camry is going to be about $388 per year. So clearly Toyota's lower cost of running and slightly more reliable. Overall rating for both these vehicles, 3.5 out of 5-star for the 300 and 4 out of 5-star for the Toyota Camry. So the Camry edges it out. But there's a little bit of trade-off. This vehicle feels more luxurious, feels more stapled together when you're driving down the road. It's quieter, more isolated, less buzzy, and clearly there are values and attributes to actually buying one of these over a Toyota Camry. But we'll get to the quality experience shortly. So instead, why don't we talk about some of the typical failures? On the Toyota Camry, a lot of the things you hear about: the odd transmission failure, weak brakes, in other words, brakes that start to warp and tweak a little bit with the hard usage, as well as that infamous Denso fuel pump. Transmissions, yes, there's been a few failures along there as well. And as a lot of you have known, the Toyota Camry that we're speaking of, I personally own, and after about 5,000 kilometers, the audio went away from the infotainment system. We had to take it down to the dealer. They had to do a hard reboot, got it back and going, and life's good. But it doesn't come without a cost. Obviously, there's still some issues associated with driving a Toyota Camry, albeit quite insignificant for the most part. The 300 here has a significant list of issues, and I really have to dive into that because it does tell a bit of a story and a tale as to the overall reliability and lifespan that you would anticipate from one of these vehicles. Everybody talks about these Chryslers having sloppy front ends. So one thing you would actually expect is noisy, clunky front suspension bits here. For some reason, Chrysler can never get it right. I have a Dodge Ram and it also has clunky front ends, and it doesn't take very many miles before you start getting clunking, banging, knocking noises from that front suspension. There's also a lack of adjustability for proper alignments, and that is also a known problem with some of these. Another issue is right here. On these windows, you can actually expect to delaminate and door panels actually to pull away from the window, and then it becomes just a really gross, unsightly piece. So it's more cosmetic ugliness that you would expect. Also, some other problems you would expect to look underneath. A lot of people talk about the under design of these vehicles tend to rot out and rust very prematurely. Whether it's cross members, whether it's exhaust systems or what have you, lots of rust can build on the bottom end of these cars, prematurely making them look like they're 40 years old. Other issues out here are lack of electric. Some problems are windows maybe stop working, possibly sunroof stop working. That's another issue that you would expect, and it's related to electrical gremlins. Also, headlights go out of alignment for some reason, trying to get that alignment right, and you're looking at the coming on traffic, and you'll find sometimes that light might be really glaring, and this light might be a little bit dimmer, is getting that proper alignment there. Another problem with these 300 Chryslers is they're typically owned by frosted, hair-tipped hot tub salesmen. That's right. But let's go inside and find out more what the issues are. See this? Oh, wait a minute. That's a tote by Coleman. But what we're looking at here is the dash, which actually feels a lot like that tote. And it's lots of rubber, and it's rubber squeaks and rattles. There's lots of fitting and material problems, which we'll talk about in the quality experience. But clearly, there's lots of plastic. You look everywhere, there's plastic, fantastic, all over the place. BMW thought they had it bad. This thing is loaded with plastic. This is rubbery feeling. It's not even leather, it's rubbery feeling there. You got plastic there, rubber there. This is all very rubbery feeling. Everywhere you go, very much rubber everywhere. You have a little bit of gloss here, but most of this is this high gloss rubber. Looks like a Coleman tote. Another issue is the U-connect right here. Of course, this is problematic in a lot of ways. It's known to fail, glitch, pause, go blank altogether. That's a common issue throughout. And as I already said, the Toyota Camry, we had the same problem. Sure, it illuminated, but then the audio went away. So clearly, the more technology they start packaging in these vehicles, the more failures you're going to expect. And the worst part is, as these vehicles age, you're going to have a vehicle that you're not going to be able to afford that $6,000 module or that $2,000 display. It's going to be cost prohibitive, and a lot of people are going to either let it die, or if it has an impact on the operation of the vehicle, you're not going to go anyway. You're going to toss that vehicle in the trash. Another issue happens to be with these, the automatic head restraints here, where they could actually inadvertently decide to dart ahead. Oh, wow, that hurts the neck. Yeah, that's a problem, and that is something that has been known as a defect on a lot of these vehicles, unfortunately. That's another example of technology getting run away. And then there's another issue that you're finding with a lot of these vehicles, and it's right here. What do we look here? You'll see that seam down there. Yeah, that's right. And it's also buried under there typically, and a lot of vehicles have either up here or in the A-pillar or in the doors. And what that is airbag. You'll notice right down here, it's embossed right there, SRS. Essentially, your airbag can blow out of there. And the problem is, it's the Takata airbag. A lot of manufacturers use that same brand, and it's been historically known to cause almost irreversible injuries, almost to the point where it's actually fatally wounded a lot of people in the event of an accident. And a lot of it has to do with areas that are high heat, high humidity. It seems to have an impact on the igniter, and then those things blow off, and there's shards of sharp metal that come out at the passenger. It's very, very scary. There's been lots of recalls for a lot of manufacturers, and Chrysler, like this, is no exception. And another really scary one that plagues certain Dodges. Now, this one not as much, but a lot of these vehicles have what they call the E-shift situation, where you don't really have the tactile feel, you don't have the obvious positive engagement that you're putting the vehicle in park, and it's caused a lot of issues. What kind of issues, I might add? Actual disengagement or lack of engagement into park. And there's a lot of cases where these vehicles have just sort of rolled away because of that particular type of engagement on that control. And obviously it's a big controversy. So something that you definitely want to make sure that you keep an eye on and be very well informed about. And of course, there's another huge problem that inflicts a lot of these vehicles from Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler. All of those brands have had one common denominator, and this is no different in this 300 that we're talking about right here. What we're looking at there is the dash. Obviously, we have got some nice lights, and it's basically right there, and oh, look, it flickers. And of course, this is an electronic item, and this is digital as well. And of course, we've got these controls here, control the windows. That is an issue, as well as that power mirror could be a problem. Engine RPM, tachometer, all of those things can be a problem, including what we're talking about right here is both your mixing door as well as the electrics that control it. You've got heaters, fans, all kinds of parts in here that can be afflicted with this issue. And a lot of the electrics within this car can be potentially afflicted by this one item, and it's the TIPM, the Totally Integrated Power power module. That's right, it's something that hits the Dodges and the Jeeps, and as well as all of these Chrysler products very, very hard from time to time. And what that is essentially it's the brain. The TIPM is a module that has all of the inputs and outputs coming into that one control module. And of course, that module affects your gauges, some of your controls, your mirrors, your lights, your windows, all of those things generally go through that TIPM. And when that TIPM fails, and it does because it's a real common failure, then what you have is a situation where your car glitches, runs, it might be running, but maybe you get a flicker of the lights or your power window stops working on the passenger side or that rear left side window stops working. There's a lot of little weird glitches that can happen to the electrics because of that TIPM. And again, as I mentioned, it's a lot of these vehicles from the FCA group that can potentially cause these problems. Very expensive proposition, and one in which, unfortunately, it might mean one of those $3,000 or $4,000 repair jobs. But there's another big problem with these cars that is starting to hit the radar. And what are we looking at right here? We have a 3.6 liter VVT, obviously variable valve timing, of course coolant there as you can see, and it's a conglomeration of issues. First of all, overheating is one issue that you can actually experience with these. Obviously rad hoses, we have great fittings of whatnot, but unfortunately, yes, overheating is one common issue that some people are talking about. Now sadly, one of the big issues that's hitting this engine, and as a matter of fact, what's actually happening, people are doing oil changes and they're finding metal in the oil. Not only that, often it results in rough running because it's your rockers, your lift pins, they're coming apart, they're breaking, and when that breaks, you wind up with metal in the oil, which is bad because it could potentially block oil passages. But equal to that, if you break a rocker, obviously your valve train's not moving properly. If that's not moving, you're going to misfire, you're going to reduce power, and unfortunately possibly check engine lights. It usually means a quick trip to the dealer to the tune of anywhere from about $2,000 to $6,000 to rectify if you have to actually rebuild part of the heads of those engines. Sad state of affair, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. This is a big issue. We also can't forget about the transmissions. A lot of people talking about jerking, surging, delays, and all kinds of drivability issues. For some reason, the transmissions are also causing some heartburn for a lot of owners of these Chryslers. So it begs the question, are in fact they reliable, and do they have the gusto to outlast the Toyota Camry? So obviously there's some serious problems that can potentially hit some of these 300s. There's a few problems that can hit the Toyotas as well, and we've talked about transmission, brakes, and some of the electrics on those vehicles too, as well as the Denso pumps. So the bottom line is, which one can potentially outlast the other? Well, let's put it this way. If you're luck of the draw, this one has the staying power to potentially run a long distance. The problem is, there's problems that you might find with this on a very low potential can cause you enough heartburn to really reduce the lifespan of this vehicle. On top of that, it's the technology that literally can limit or reduce the lifespan of these vehicles, but that doesn't begin and end with Chrysler. We know with Toyota, some of the infotainment system issues that we're starting to see, and as we start going down the path with Toyota using more turbochargers, that will obviously have an impact, where a lot of these engines here are still naturally aspirated, and as such, they're a simpler engine with simpler things and less potential to fail. Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep have never been known for high levels of reliability, and a 3.5 out of 5 star by RepairPal indicates that it's a very moderate level of durability. So you take your chance with these vehicles. But if you really want to have one, because let's talk about, that's the base engine with the 3.6. We can't forget that you can get the big hot rod V8 engines under the hood and make these things a real potent weapon for the street. However, let's do a little quality experience on the Toyota first. And listen to this little kitty purr right here. And now, of course, what you've all been waiting for, the Chrysler 300 quality experience. We look at some of the big problems, do a cold start, and we'll share it for you. That was a really clean cold start, but how does it actually sound under the hood here? Let's take a listen. That sounded pretty solid. Let's take a look around outside and then go inside for the quality experience. As you can see, lots of plastic, miles of it. It's like a Tupperware container in there. If you sell hot tubs, this is definitely the car for you. If you're looking for a reliable car that's gonna last a long time, you're splitting hairs. Likely the best bet will again go to Toyota Camry, but if you want something with the capability of stepping into the next level of performance, remember, 300 horsepower here base engine. To get the 300 horse in the Camry, you're similar money. Base Camry is about 6 grand less, but that's with the 4-cylinder engine. So if you want more jam, you can also opt up for the V8. That gives you some capabilities here, and this is actually a very attractive car. So from a quality perspective, less quality going on here. Certainly the materials widely used are plastics throughout this vehicle. Camrys, of course, similar story there. But if you were to bet which vehicle would last 250 to 300,000 miles with the proper maintenance, my money goes on Toyota over the Chrysler. And with all of that said, you're definitely gonna love that video then, because that's the question, ultimately, whether a Toyota Camry is more reliable than a modern day Honda. We get into those full details right there. You're gonna love that video. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll catch you real soon. Bye-bye.